20 years. That's how long I carried the weight of someone else's lie on my shoulders. 2 full decades of pretending, providing, protecting, playing a part in a story that was never mine to begin with. And then today, my daughter, no, her daughter, screamed at me with eyes full of fury, with a voice laced in venom that didn't come from nowhere. She didn't inherit it from me. No. That kind of spite is passed down from the woman who built a house of lies and called it a home. You destroyed our family through adultery 20 years ago. She spat. I didn't say a word. Just reached into my jacket pocket, the one I wore every day of my life for work, for dinners, for holidays. The same pocket that held receipts of gas payments and grocery bills and birthday cards and apology notes for things I never did. And today, it held something else. An envelope. Standard white. Nothing dramatic. No handwritten warning. No threats. No drama. Just truth. Finally, I handed it to her without ceremony. Quiet. Cold. Done. She hesitated, but curiosity that she inherited from me made her fingers peel back the flap. She slid the paper out and stared at it. I watched her face. Her brow furrowed. Her mouth moved soundlessly. Her eyes scanned back and forth over one line. A single, unmistakable line. Father, not a match. Biological father, Raymond M. Green. And just like that, the screaming stopped. She froze. Entire body turned to stone, as if the ground shifted beneath her and she didn't know whether to fall or run. I didn't give her the chance to decide. I stood up, slow, calm, and walked toward the front door of the house I built. With my hands. With my sweat. With my paycheck and my patience and my principles. I walked past the kitchen table where I used to help her with homework. Past the living room couch where she'd curl up and fall asleep on my chest while watching cartoons. Past the stairs that led to the bedroom where her mother cried wolf and played victim for 2 decades straight. And then I opened the door. The late afternoon sun spilled in like a spotlight, and I walked straight into it without looking back. Not once. Because when you've been a ghost in your own life for 20 years, walking away isn't hard. It's liberation. The door clicked shut behind me. Not a slam, not a bang, just a soft click. The kind of sound that marks the end of something with finality. I didn't expect her to chase after me. She didn't. The silence that followed was louder than her accusations ever were. The driveway was empty. My truck, the one I bought when she was still in diapers, was long gone. Sold it last month. It wasn't worth what I poured into it, just like this marriage. This family. I walked. No destination in mind. Just steps away from the past, each one peeling layers off a man I barely recognized in the mirror anymore. I could still see her face. My daughter, her mouth frozen halfway open, eyes flickering with realization and denial in a tug of war. She wasn't angry anymore. She was shattered. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel bad either. You see, for 20 years, I ate my words like bitter pills. I swallowed questions that chewed holes in my gut. I looked at her every single day, this child I fed, clothed, taught how to ride a bike, and I tried to believe she was mine. But something inside me always knew. Not just because she didn't look like me. I could have lived with that. Genetics play tricks sometimes. No, it was the way her mother would flinch when I'd joke, "She's got your temper." The way she overcompensated with affection when I'd take her to the park. The way she shut down entirely the day I suggested we all do a paternity test as a joke during one of those trashy daytime TV shows. I still remember how pale she went. "You don't trust me?" she'd whispered that night. "No," I said, and I meant it. "But I love you." She cried then. Maybe guilt. Maybe panic. Maybe just the Oscar-worthy performance she'd perfected. I'll tell you this. When a woman cries after you catch her in a lie, it's not about hurt. It's about control slipping away. The paternity test didn't come until later. Years later. Quietly ordered. Anonymously handled. I mailed in my own sample with shaking hands. I sat on the result for 3 months before I even opened the envelope. And when I did, I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that comes from amusement. The kind that echoes in an empty house and dies in your throat. The kind that hurts more than the truth. I kept the results in my gun safe. Locked. Hidden. Next to the revolver I hadn't touched since the day we lost our family dog and I had to put him down. That day hurt less. My lawyer saw it coming before I did. Told me, "You can stay for her, but it'll cost you your soul." I stayed anyway. For my daughter. Until I found out she wasn't. You know what 20 years of loyalty gets you? It gets you screamed at in your own living room. It gets your daughter, who isn't even yours, telling you that you broke the family. You. Not the woman who cheated. Not the lie that sat between every smile and every family dinner. You. And that's the part that hits the hardest. Not the betrayal. Not even the deception. It's being made the villain in a story where you were the only one trying to be the hero. So I walked. Just like that. And with every step, I felt a little more like myself again. The man I used to be before she sank her claws into my decency and chewed up my trust like cheap gum. And for the first time in 2 decades, I didn't look over my shoulder. I didn't need to, because what was behind me was already dead. You don't realize how much noise you've been living with until you step into silence. I checked into a roadside motel that night. One of those places with peeling paint and cigarette burns on the comforter. The kind of place people disappear into when they don't want to be found. Fitting. I didn't need luxury, I needed distance. The clerk didn't ask questions. Just slid the key across the counter like he'd done it 1,000 times. Maybe he had. Maybe 100 other men had come through here with the same hollow look in their eyes. Men who gave everything and left with nothing. Room 217. I still remember the way the lock clicked. It was the only sound I heard for hours. I sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, staring at the floor. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, trying to figure out what the hell kind of life I had left. Not much, when you really think about it. A wife who weaponized trust. A daughter who inherited a lie. A house filled with photos of a family that never actually existed. And me? I was a ghost with a social security number. I stood up and caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. For a second, I didn't recognize the man staring back. Same brown eyes? Yeah. Same scar above the brow from a baseball game in high school. But the rest? Different. This version of me had edges. The kind that come from too many broken promises and too much time biting your tongue. There was something colder now. Something leaner. Like I'd shed the weight of years in the span of a few hours. I studied him. So this is who you are now, I thought. Not the husband. Not the father. Not the provider. Just a man. A man who finally stopped bleeding for people who kept handing him knives. I slept that night, surprisingly. The kind of deep, dreamless sleep that only comes when the worst has already happened. When the other shoe isn't just dropped, it's stomped on your chest. When I woke up, my phone had blown up with messages. My wife, ex-wife, let's just call her that now, left 5 voicemails. The first 3 were frantic. The next 2 were venomous. I didn't listen to any of them. Just read the texts. You blindsided her. She's devastated. How could you walk away like that? Like I hadn't been dying slowly in that house for years. Like I hadn't earned the right to walk away. And then, the message that almost made me laugh. You're still her dad. DNA doesn't change that. Oh, but it does. Not because of the science. Not even because of the blood. But because she looked me in the eye and blamed me for the affair her mother had. That's when the line was crossed. That's when it became clear that I'd been nothing but a prop in their drama. A placeholder for convenience. A fool who kept the lights on while they rewrote history around him. You know the worst part? I was ready to take the secret to my grave. I was. For her. For the girl I called my daughter for 20 years. I was willing to live with it, until she screamed at me like I was the one who ripped the family apart. Like I was the traitor. No, that honor belongs to her mother. And to the man whose name sat at the bottom of that paternity report like a rusted knife in my back. Raymond M. Green. Funny thing about Ray. He was there. Always in the background. Old friend. Family acquaintance. A handshake at barbecues. A nod at school plays. The occasional, let me know if you ever need anything. I should have known. It's always the ones who act like furniture, quiet, dependable, and just there. I started digging after I got the results. I wasn't planning on it, but once you open the door to hell, curiosity's a demanding host. What I found about Ray, that's coming. But first, I needed to disappear. Just long enough for them to wonder what happens when the man they underestimated stops playing the fool. Raymond M. Green. If you'd asked me a year ago to name 5 people I trusted around my family, he would have made the list. Not because we were close, but because he was harmless. Quiet. Background noise. The kind of guy who never made waves, just floated along like a leaf in the current. Turns out he was the current, and he swept everything away while I was too damn busy working overtime to see it. After I walked away and settled into my borrowed silence, I couldn't help myself. I had to know who he really was, the man whose DNA overrode mine. So I did what any man with time and motivation does. I started digging. He's not hard to find. Lives 3 towns over. Married, though that's hanging by a thread judging by the public court records. Owns a small landscaping company. Ironically, built on the idea of trust, care, and loyalty. You can't make this stuff up. I pulled up photos online, community events, old softball teams, neighborhood fundraisers. And there he was, standing next to me in two of them. One had him shaking my hand while our daughters, his biological, mine in every way that counted, ran through the grass behind us. I stared at that photo for a long time. It hit different now. I remembered the day like it was yesterday. Our kids were maybe 9 or 10. He showed up late, said he'd gotten stuck helping a neighbor. I grilled hot dogs while he leaned against the fence, sipping a soda and watching her. My wife. It all fits now. The subtle way her posture changed when he walked up. The way she laughed harder at his jokes than she did at mine. The way she avoided my eye when I mentioned how often he seemed to be around lately. You're imagining things, she said. God, I wanted to believe that. But no man forgets when his gut sounds the alarm, even if his heart tries to silence it. And the girl, my daughter, who I tucked in every night, who I taught to ride a bike, who I stayed home with when she had the flu, she's his blood. His features, his grin. But she got my values, my sarcasm, my instinct to look people in the eye when telling the truth. That's how I know. Deep down, she'll come to terms with what really happened. She just needs time to sort out what was fed to her by a mother who weaponized every ounce of trust one ever gave her. You know what stung most? It wasn't the lie. It was knowing that he got to be the source while I was the one stuck in the shadows. He never paid a dime for her shoes or braces. He never missed a day of work to sit through a school concert or bail her out of a teenage mistake. He just donated his DNA and kept his mouth shut. And she got to grow up thinking I was the overbearing one, the strict one, the guy who didn't understand her the way Mom did. Of course I didn't, because I wasn't in on the lie. They built a secret out of my blind loyalty and called it love. So I looked into Ray's life. Quietly, carefully. Bank records, social media posts, public filings. Turns out the man has some skeletons. Tax inconsistencies. A lawsuit from a former employee that got quietly settled. Late payments on a second mortgage. And something that really raised my eyebrows. A registered business car parked overnight, multiple times, in a different zip code. Right around the time my wife used to claim she was visiting her sister. Connect the dots? You get a constellation of betrayal. But here's the kicker. I'm not going to confront him. Not yet. Because unlike him, I believe in timing. I believe in precision. And I believe in letting a lie collapse under its own weight. He thinks he got away with it. She thinks she controlled the fallout. They both forgot one thing. You can lie to a man for 20 years, but you only get to shatter him once. And I'm already broken. What comes next? That's the part they should be afraid of. You know what's funny? When a man finally stops lying to himself, the world starts looking a whole lot clearer. The fog lifts. Faces sharpen. Voices sound different. More hollow, more scripted. And the house you once called home starts feeling like the stage it always was. Just plywood and props. That motel room became my war room. My bunker. Nothing fancy, just a bed, a lamp, a busted chair, and silence. But in that silence, I planned. Not revenge. No, not in the petty, soap opera sense. What I planned was restoration. Not of the family. That's gone. Not of the marriage. That's ash. I planned to restore myself. The man I was before I sacrificed everything for people who only saw me as useful until I got in the way of their fantasy life. But first, I needed to remove the last trace of obligation. Her. The woman who once swore, "Till death do us part," while carrying another man's secret inside her. The same woman who turned my daughter into a pawn and me into a punching bag of guilt. I called the lawyer. Told him everything. Gave him the paternity documents. Explained how long I'd stayed. Explained why I was leaving now. He asked if I wanted to contest anything. No, I said. Just give me clean papers and a clean break. He paused. You know this isn't just about divorce, right? You raised that girl for 20 years. Legally. I know the law. I cut in. But I also know the truth. I'm not paying to be punished. My lawyer said nothing for a second. Then, you sure about this? Let me put it this way, I told him. I'd rather sleep on a cot with my dignity intact than in a king-sized bed built on lies. He started drafting. While he worked the legal side, I started cleaning house, my house. Figuratively, at first. Bank accounts? Moved. Auto payments? Canceled. Joint credit cards? Closed. I even pulled cash from a separate savings account I kept since before we were married. She never knew about it. I called it the line in my head. As in, the line between staying and walking. Guess which side I was on now? I also deleted photos. Not all of them. I'm not made of stone. There were real moments in there. Her first bike ride, her first snow day, her falling asleep on my chest while pretending not to be tired. Those weren't her fault. She didn't ask to be born into a lie. But the ones with her, my wife, the stranger I used to share a bed with, they had to go. There's a special kind of cruelty in being so intimately known by someone who is never loyal to you. Every smile becomes a weapon. Every "I love you" turns into a mocking echo. You don't realize it until you're out. But once you are, it's like stepping out of a burning building and realizing you were on fire the whole time. Then came the messages. Dozens of them. From her. From our daughter. From mutual friends. One stood out. "We need to talk. You can't just walk away like this." Actually, I could. And I did. But curiosity, it's a stubborn thing. So I typed back one sentence. "Let's talk. Public place. Just you and her." I wanted one last conversation. Not to fix anything, but to end it with clarity. We met at a diner. Middle of the afternoon, mostly empty. I got there early and picked the booth with the best view of the door. Old habit from when I worked security in my 20s, never sit with your back exposed. She walked in first. Sunglasses, tight-lipped, her guilt dressed up as concern. And behind her, the girl I raised. She looked hollow, not angry anymore, not defiant, just confused. Maybe for the first time in her life, she realized the ground under her wasn't made of stone, it was made of sand. They sat across from me. No greetings. No small talk. Just tension. She opened her mouth first. "Why are you doing this to her?" To her? I almost laughed. Instead, I reached into my jacket and slid a folder across the table. Same one I gave my daughter before. The original DNA report. Unedited. Unapologetic. My daughter, hers, has opened it again. I could tell she hadn't looked since I left. Her eyes ran down the page, just like before. Silence. Then she looked up at her mother, and for the first time in 20 years, she looked through her. Not at her. Through her. And I knew then, the lie was dead. I stood up. Didn't say a word. Didn't give a speech. Didn't rub it in. I just nodded once. Then I walked away. For good. You think walking away ends it. It doesn't. Walking away just starts the avalanche. The real damage happens after you're gone, when the structure you've been silently holding up for years finally collapses under its own weight. That's when people start scrambling, when the comfortable lies turn into jagged, exposed truths. And sure enough, the calls didn't stop. They changed. The tone shifted from anger to panic. "We need to figure this out. She's devastated. You're being cruel. Don't abandon her after everything." The woman who stabbed my back was now suddenly concerned about my absence. Amazing how fast they try to play the victim when their leverage slips. But here's the problem for them. You can't guilt a man who's already carried 20 years of guilt that wasn't his. The day after that diner meeting, my lawyer called. Her attorney reached out. Predictably. "They're scrambling, Jake," my lawyer said. "They want to negotiate." Negotiate what? I asked, sipping my coffee like we were talking about the weather. "Custody, support, division of assets." I cut him off. "There's no custody. I'm not the father." "Well, legally you're still a..." "I'll fight it. We'll DNA this all the way up the chain. If they want a war, they'll get one. I'm not paying a penny for the lie they built." The silence on the other end told me everything. He knew I meant it. See, most guys in my position break at this point. They get worn down by the system, by the courts, by the endless parade of mediators and judges who preach about the child's best interest, while ignoring how she got here in the first place. But I was past breaking. They already broke me. All that was left now was stone. And you know what happens when you hammer stone? It either cracks or sharpens. I chose sharp. Word got out. Small town. Rumors move faster than facts. At first it was whispers. Then the questions started. "Hey, I heard you're getting divorced? Man, I thought you two were solid. Your girl okay?" I kept it simple. Family matter. That's all I said. Let them speculate. Let the vultures circle. I wasn't going to defend myself to people who never bothered to ask how many nights I came home exhausted and still sat through dance recitals, school plays, parent-teacher conferences. I knew my truth. The people who mattered? They'd see it soon enough. One person did reach out who I didn't expect. Her sister, Lucy. We never got along much, but she was always smarter than her older sister. And maybe, just maybe, guilt eats at people in different ways when they aren't the ones directly benefiting from the lie. Her message was simple. "Jake, I'm sorry. I didn't know it went this deep. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her. Not even because I didn't believe her. But because at this point, apologies were like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. The damage was done. She had a front row seat to years of deception. She saw her sister change. She heard the rumors. She said nothing. Complicity by silence. A few days later, I finally heard the name again. Raymond M. Green. Funny how the universe delivers these things. Turns out word spread through his circle, too. His wife, yes, the man was married the whole time, found out. Someone, somewhere, let it slip. Maybe my wife's attorney. Maybe his accountant. Maybe just plain gossip. Didn't matter. The result was the same. Divorce. Public records. Asset freeze. Civil suits. His whole carefully manicured image burned to the ground faster than I ever could have arranged. Karma doesn't need help. It just needs time. That's when I understood something powerful. I didn't need revenge. I just needed truth. And now that truth was doing all the work for me. Quietly. Systematically. Efficiently. The house of cards they built was collapsing. Piece by piece. And me? I was already gone. I wasn't there to witness the screaming matches, the blame shifting, the frantic phone calls trying to control the narrative. I didn't care anymore. They were finally being forced to live in the world they created. Without me. I knew it would happen eventually. After the anger, after the silence, after the storm, there's always the reach. It started with a message. From her. My daughter. The one I raised. The one I thought was mine. The one who wasn't. Can we talk? Short. Hesitant. No punctuation, like her hands were shaking as she typed. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I didn't want to hear from her, but because I didn't know who she was anymore. For 20 years, I'd poured everything into her. The bedtime stories, the scraped knees, the late-night ER visit when she broke her wrist falling off the monkey bars. All of it. But that girl didn't scream at me in the living room. This girl did. The one who inherited her mother's narrative and threw it in my face the second her world got shaken. Still, I answered. Where and when? We met at the park. The same one where I used to push her on the swings, where she'd yell, higher, daddy, and giggle like the world was nothing but blue skies and safety. Now we sat on opposite sides of a weathered bench. No swings. No giggles. She spoke first. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Unsure. I don't know where to start. I let the silence sit. Sometimes people fill the quiet with what they're really thinking. Finally, she continued. I was angry. When you left. I didn't know. I nodded. Didn't know what? Her eyes watered. About him. About Mom. About any of it. I didn't rescue her from her own words. She needed to say them. I believed her. I thought she swallowed hard, that you were bitter, that you wanted to hurt us. I clenched my jaw. Not out of anger. Out of restraint. Because every word she said was a knife into 20 years of sacrifice. I'm sorry, she whispered finally. The words just sat there between us, like some fragile bird unsure if it should fly or fall. I studied her. I looked for him in her face. Raymond Green. The man whose blood ran through her veins. I saw him now. The eyes. The cheekbones. Subtle, but undeniable. But I also saw me, or at least who I had been in her life. The man who taught her right from wrong. The man who taught her how to throw a ball, fix a leaky faucet, change a tire. The man who was there every time her world cracked, and she needed someone to catch her. That wasn't his work. That was mine. I took a breath. I'm not angry at you, I said, finally. I never was. You were a child. You believed what you were told. She wiped her eyes. I feel like I don't even know who I am. I shook my head. That part's simple. You are who you choose to be. You always were. She looked up, searching for something in my face. Do you still think of me as your daughter? I let that sit for a moment. A long one. Then I spoke carefully. Not out of cruelty, but out of truth. You were my daughter for 20 years. And I'll always remember that version of us. But I can't pretend nothing happened. That's not how real love works. Real love doesn't survive by lying to itself. And I won't lie anymore. Not to you. Not to me. She cried then. Silent tears, not the manipulative kind. The real kind. I let her cry. Because sometimes, the most honest thing a person can do is sit in the pain they helped create. When she finally wiped her face, she whispered, I never wanted this. Neither did I. Then maybe, I said, standing up, you'll learn not to build your life on someone else's line next time. I put my hand on her shoulder for one final moment, brief, gentle, then turned and walked away. Again. And this time, it was even easier. Because now, the truth wasn't just mine anymore. Funny thing about secrets. When they finally break loose, they don't just wound the innocent. They turn on their creators too. The ones who thought they were clever enough to outmaneuver consequences. That was happening now. While my daughter sat in her personal storm of realization, her mother, my ex-wife, was dealing with the part nobody ever thinks about during an affair. The long tail of exposure. She wasn't used to that. For 20 years, she'd been the puppet master. The victim when things got uncomfortable. The strong woman when she needed admiration. The martyr when she needed sympathy. Now, the mask was slipping. Word had spread. Not because I told anyone a hell no. I didn't need to run my mouth. The town, the circle she cherished, the very people she'd spent years trying to impress, they whispered. Whispers move fast when they're about people who pretend to be perfect. Her sister Lucy called again. She's a mess, Jake. I didn't respond. Seriously. She's falling apart. People know. Friends are backing away. Good. She's losing clients. Better. Even her mother's distancing herself. Best. You see, my ex built her business on the back of her carefully crafted image. Perfect marriage. Supportive husband. Wonderful family. That image is worth more than any dollar figure on a divorce settlement. Without it, she's nothing but another middle-aged woman who built a fantasy house on quicksand. And now she was sinking. A few days later, I got a legal notice. She was contesting portions of the divorce agreement my lawyer had drawn up, attempting to claim spousal support. Let that sink in. The same woman who cheated on me for decades, who built a child on another man's DNA while I footed every bill, who gaslit me in my own home. Now she wanted me to pay her alimony. Entitlement is an ugly disease. She argued that despite the recent developments, I still owed her support for maintaining her quality of life. My lawyer called me after receiving the filing. She's playing dirty now, Jake. I almost laughed. Let her, I said calmly. We'll expose every detail. See, courtrooms aren't built for feelings. They're built for facts. And facts? I had plenty. Paternity fraud? Check. Adultery? Check. Financial deception? Check. Emotional damages? Check. She wanted a war? She was about to lose one. And the best part? Her precious Raymond M. Green was now embroiled in his own legal mess with his soon-to-be ex-wife. His finances were being subpoenaed. His company? Under investigation for tax irregularities. The man couldn't even defend her if he wanted to. Two snakes caught in their own nest. Perfect. Meanwhile, I stayed silent. Publicly, at least. At work, I was sharper than I'd been in years. Focused. Efficient. No distractions. The guys I worked with didn't ask too many questions. They just knew something changed. You seem lighter, man, one of them said during lunch. I am, I answered. And I meant it. Because when you finally cut out the infection, the body starts healing. The town started seeing it too. Suddenly, people who once fawned over her started avoiding her at the grocery store. Suddenly, friends stopped inviting her to events. Suddenly, the perfect wife was now the cautionary tale. Did you hear what she did to Jake? 20 years. Can you believe it? Poor guy. Raised that child like his own. I didn't plant these seeds. I didn't have to. Truth grows wild once you stop covering it up. And my ex? She was now reaping exactly what she sowed. Alone. Exposed. And finally, powerless. I always hated lawyers. Before all this, I thought they were vultures. But sometimes, you need a vulture to pick apart a carcass, especially when your enemy already did the killing for you. My lawyer, Gordon, was one of the best. Not the flashiest. Not the most expensive. But sharp. Clinical. A man who took it personal when someone tried to screw his client. When my ex filed her claim for spousal support, Gordon smiled. She's either desperate or stupid, he said. Probably both, I replied. He laid out the plan. Simple. Ruthless. Bulletproof. We weren't going to argue in court. We were going to present. Cold facts. No emotion. Let the judge connect the dots. The day of the hearing arrived. I wore the same thing I always wore, a simple navy suit, clean shave, steady eyes. Let them walk in like drama was still currency. She arrived first. Tight-lipped, pale, trying to act composed, but visibly cracking. Behind her? No Raymond. Of course not. He was busy fighting his own legal disaster. Poetic. Her lawyer was one of those typical courtroom sharks. Lots of bravado, empty threats, and the kind of fake confidence that only works on weak opponents. Not today. The judge entered, a stern woman known for being allergic to theatrics. Exactly who we wanted. Her side spoke first. They painted a sob story. 20 years of marriage. Lifestyle dependency. Emotional hardship from recent revelations. Loss of business income due to unforeseen personal matters. Unforeseen. That one almost made me smirk. Then Gordon stood. Calm. Controlled. Your Honor, we won't waste the court's time with emotional appeals. Instead, we present the following evidence. One by one, he laid it out. Paternity test, notarized, authenticated. Years of concealed infidelity, complete with corroborating witness statements from Lucy, her own sister, who finally flipped to save her own skin. Financial discrepancies, her secret credit cards, undisclosed bank accounts funded by personal business clients. Text records between her and Raymond. Between her and friends who knew. Screenshots. Dated. Verified. He handed each file to the judge like a man dealing cards. Then came the final nail. And lastly, Your Honor, we submit this affidavit from Mr. Raymond Green's pending divorce deposition, admitting to his ongoing affair with Mrs. ex-wife's name during the marriage. There it was. Signed. Stamped. Admissible. The room went still. Her lawyer fidgeted. Whispered frantically into her ear. She just stared at the table, face drained, hands trembling. The judge flipped through the document slowly. No emotion. No pity. Finally, she spoke. Based on the overwhelming evidence of deception, infidelity, and financial misconduct, this court denies all claims for spousal support. Furthermore, Mrs. ex-wife's name will bear responsibility for her own legal fees and associated costs. She banged the gavel once. Court is adjourned. I stood, straightened my jacket. Didn't even glance at my ex as I walked out. Let her sit there. Let her process what it feels like to lose everything while the man she once controlled walks away untouched. Outside the courthouse, Gordon patted my shoulder. That, my friend, is how you end a war. I nodded. It's not the end. He raised an eyebrow. No, I said. It's just the part where I finally get to breathe. You'd think walking out of that courthouse would bring some kind of fireworks, some grand feeling of triumph. It didn't. It was quieter than that. Cleaner. More final. Not because I didn't care, but because there wasn't anything left to care about. The battle was over. The years they stole from me? Spent. The family I thought I had? Gone. Now all that was left was wreckage. Theirs, not mine. News spreads fast when reputations collapse. First, the fallout hit her. The woman who once filled rooms with fake smiles and borrowed charm was now a cautionary tale in town. The woman who prided herself on being admired became the one people whispered about while pretending to sip coffee. Did you hear what she did to Jake? 20 years. Raised another man's kid. She tried to take him to court after cheating. Unbelievable. She started losing clients for her business. Quietly at first, but then the cancellations rolled in. Word gets around when the mask slips. Corporate contracts don't like scandal. Especially not the kind that exposes a woman as manipulative and dishonest. In a matter of months, her little business, the one she once paraded as her pride, was bleeding out. Ironically, she finally had the financial hardship she cried about in court. Only this time, there was no one left to fix it for her. No husband. No backup plan. And Raymond? Well, his ship was sinking even faster. When Raymond's wife filed for divorce, she didn't play softball like I did. She came with forensic accountants, private investigators, and a team of lawyers who smelled blood in the water. Turns out, Raymond's landscaping business was less landscaping and more tax shelter. He'd been dodging tax obligations for years, funneling cash under the table to keep his little affair-fueled life comfortable. The IRS doesn't like that. Once federal agents got involved, his little empire folded like wet paper. Frozen assets. Heavy fines. Public humiliation. Last I heard, he sold off his equipment at auction and filed for bankruptcy. Fitting. For a man who spent years planting seeds in my wife's life, he finally got buried by the roots he planted. And my daughter? That was the part that stayed complicated. She reached out. More than once. Always careful. Always hesitant. Can we meet for coffee? I've been thinking a lot. I want to explain. I met her once. One afternoon. Neutral ground. She looked tired. Older somehow. Like carrying the weight of her mother's deception finally started pressing on her shoulders. We talked. Not like father and daughter. Like two people standing at the edge of the same cliff, staring at different drops. I didn't know, Dad, she said softly. Stop calling me that, I answered, not cruelly. Just honest. She bit her lip, tears forming. You raised me. I did. You loved me. I did. I still love you. That one sat heavy. I leaned forward, choosing my words carefully. You'll always be the girl I raised. And nothing can change those memories. But the relationship? That was built on lies I didn't choose. You want a future with me? You have to build it yourself. From zero. On truth. No more sides. No more cover-ups. No more defending your mother. She nodded, silently crying. And that was it. I didn't promise anything. I didn't offer comfort I wasn't sure I could give. She has to earn what was once freely given. That's how real trust works. And me? I bought a small place outside of town. Quiet. Modest. No more mortgage tied to someone else's face. No more photos of lies on the mantle. Just mine. Every evening I sit on the porch. Coffee or whiskey in hand, depending on the night. And I finally breathe. Full, clean, guilt-free breaths. Because freedom isn't loud. It's silent. It's still. It's earned. You'd think after the courtroom loss, the public shame, and watching Raymond's world implode, she would have finally done what she should have done from the beginning. Disappear quietly. But no. People like her don't go down with grace. They don't understand surrender because they've spent their whole lives manipulating the field. Even when they're drowning, they're still trying to pull someone else under to save themselves. And in her mind, that someone was still me. The message came through my lawyer first. She's filed an appeal, Gordon said, voice steady, but even he sounded a little tired of her at this point. On what grounds? Claims of emotional distress. Claims she was coerced. Claims the court was biased due to community rumors. I let out a breath. Slow. Controlled. You're kidding. I wish I was. She's grasping at straws, Jake. She's trying to reopen the spousal support case. The desperation was bleeding through her paperwork like a wounded animal trying to chew its own leg off. You see, when people like her lose control, they don't accept consequences, they try to rewrite them. If she couldn't get my money by guilt. If she couldn't steal it through manipulation. She'd try to drag it out through exhaustion. Hoping I'd break. Hoping I'd settle. Hoping I'd pay something just to make it stop. But she forgot who she was dealing with now. I wasn't the man she married. I was the man who survived her. Tell her attorney one sentence, I said to Gordon. I'll fight this until she has to sell the shoes off her feet to cover legal fees. There was silence on the other end. Then Gordon chuckled softly. Consider it delivered. And here's where her plan unraveled completely. While she was busy fabricating emotional trauma, my lawyer filed counter motions. Submitting the original paternity fraud again, only this time attached to a formal claim of marital fraud. Submitting new evidence of her financial misconduct that surfaced post-divorce. Requesting court-ordered reimbursement for previous child-related expenses I covered under false pretenses. We didn't just defend. We went on offense. Her appeal not only got shut down, it triggered a new financial audit. Every lie she thought she buried came up for air like rotting corpses. The judge's ruling was swift, cold, and absolute. Further attempts to pursue spousal support or financial relief from Mr. My last name will be considered legal harassment and subject to sanctions. Translation. Try me again, and you'll end up owing him. That was the moment the game officially ended. After that, it got quiet. Dead quiet. No more calls. No more legal filings. No more desperate messages. She finally learned what real power looks like. It's not screaming. It's not threats. It's not the manipulation she mastered. Real power is indifference. And I had finally mastered that. As for Raymond, he vanished. Rumor was he moved 2 states over, working under the table, divorced, broke, and likely still under IRS watch. He built his life on shadows. Shadows don't hold. My daughter? Still working. Still slowly reaching. We'd exchanged a few texts light, cautious. Nothing deep. Not yet. But there was one she sent that stuck with me. I hope one day you'll let me make things right. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because sometimes the heaviest forgiveness is letting someone carry the weight long enough to understand its size. She wasn't ready yet, but at least she was walking toward it. That's more than I can say for her mother. Peace is a strange thing. You fight for it. You bleed for it. And once you finally hold it in your hands, you guard it like gold. So when the knock came that night, soft, hesitant, I knew before I even opened the door that nothing good ever follows that kind of knock. It was her. Not her. Not the woman who betrayed me. Her. My daughter. Standing on my porch, alone. The porch light caught her face, Different now. Older. Less certain. A face that finally carried some of the weight she used to throw so carelessly at me. She looked small out there, like she wasn't sure she belonged anymore. I know I should have called first, she said softly. I said nothing, just held the door. She stepped inside carefully, like walking through someone else's home. In a way, she was. Because this house wasn't built on the lie I lived before. This one was mine. We sat at the kitchen table. Same one where I now drank coffee in silence every morning, reading books I never had time for when I was busy being someone else's fool. She stared at her hands, fidgeting like she used to do as a kid when she knew she was about to confess something. Finally, she looked up. I've been seeing a therapist. Good. She needed one. God knows she inherited enough wreckage. And I've been learning about, she paused, trauma, about narcissism, about manipulation. Still, I waited. Mom's sick, Dad. I know, I said flatly. I mean, she's really sick. She's not just wrong. She's broken. She controlled everything. Me. You. Everybody. She took a breath. I didn't see it until now. I defended her because I was part of it. Because it was easier to believe her version of you than face how ugly things really were. Her voice cracked a bit. I let her turn me against you. There it was. Finally. Not just guilt. Ownership. I nodded. Still calm. Still silent. I don't expect you to forgive me, she whispered. I finally spoke. Good. Her eyes widened. I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. You're not entitled to forgiveness. You have to earn it. She nodded quickly, tears falling. I want to. I studied her. This wasn't the entitled girl who once screamed at me in my own living room. This was a young woman, finally learning what reality felt like without someone else's lies feeding her. You know who your father is? I asked. Biologically? Yes. She swallowed hard. But the man who raised me? The man who showed up? The man who kept loving me even when I didn't deserve it? That was you. The tears were flowing freely now. For the first time in a long, long time, I reached across the table. My hand covered hers. You don't have to fix everything overnight. But if you want to rebuild something between us, you show up. You keep showing up. With honesty. With work. With patience. She nodded through her tears. I will. I didn't say I love you. Not yet. Love isn't words right now. Love is work. And after 20 years of carrying everyone else's lies, she would have to do the heavy lifting for once. That night, after she left, I sat back on that porch. Different kind of silence this time. Not the bitter silence of betrayal. Not the cold silence of survival. This was possibility. And that's dangerous. Because once you let possibility back in, you risk getting hurt all over again. But maybe, just maybe, some risks are worth it. I should have known she wouldn't stay quiet forever. Parasites don't die quietly. They cling. They scheme. And when they sense their host has moved on, they'll find any desperate way to sink their teeth in one last time. 2 weeks after my daughter visited, it came. A letter. Certified. Official looking. Not from her directly. She didn't have that kind of spine anymore, but from a new lawyer. A different kind of lawyer. Civil suit. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Yeah, now she was accusing me of causing her pain. Me, the man who raised another man's child for 20 years. Me, the man who provided while she built her little house of cards. Me, the man who walked away silently, without dragging her through the public mud like I easily could have. She accused me of public humiliation, psychological harm, and irreparable financial damage caused by the exposure of our family situation. In simple English, I had the nerve to expose her lies, and now she wanted to punish me for it. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. I met with Gordon the next morning. He already had the file printed and highlighted. Jake, he said, shaking his head. This is pure harassment. I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. Is there any chance this gets traction? If the judge was blind and deaf, maybe. But this won't fly. He slid a paper across the desk. In fact, we're going to file for sanctions. If she wants to play dirty, we'll bury her under the same dirt she's throwing. This wasn't just another desperate money grab. No, this was different. This was her lashing out because the control was completely gone. You see, she didn't want money this time. Not really. What she wanted was attention, a reaction, a reason to pull me back into her orbit where she could keep spinning webs. Control addicts don't know how to function when you go no contact. The silence becomes their enemy. So they make noise. But here's where her plan backfired spectacularly. Gordon didn't just file for sanctions. We filed for legal harassment and malicious prosecution. We attached every previous court document, every ruling, every judgment that had already disqualified her claims. Her frivolous lawsuit wasn't just dismissed. The judge fined her for wasting court resources, ordered her to pay my legal fees, and filed a warning in the system for any future filings from her against me. Translation: she's legally boxed in now. Forever. One more false move, and she risks actual criminal contempt charges. And when the ruling came down, that's when the last real message came. A text, late at night. Her. You destroyed me. I stared at the screen for a long time, and I finally replied, only once. No. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. Blocked the number right after. That was the last time I heard her voice. And God willing, the last time I ever will. By the time the dust settled, she was broke, publicly humiliated, legally cornered, and socially exiled. The woman who spent years believing she could twist reality like taffy finally learned what happens when reality twists back. And me? I kept breathing, kept rebuilding, kept sitting on that porch, watching the sun rise like it owed me something. And you know what? It did. Because for the first time in decades, the sun rose on my life. People love to talk about betrayal, the drama, the courtroom fights, the collapse. But nobody talks about what happens after, when the house is already burned down, when there's nothing left but ash. That's where real recovery begins. And let me tell you, it's not glamorous. It's quiet, uncomfortable, and lonely. For years, my life revolved around them. Every schedule, every bill, every vacation plan, every small compromise that, one by one, chipped away at who I was. I didn't even realize how much of myself I handed over, until there was nothing left to give. Now I had nothing but myself. And honestly, that was the most terrifying part. No more legal documents. No more angry voicemails. No more custody battles. No more. You need to understand where I'm coming from conversations. Just silence. The first few weeks after it all ended, I didn't know what to do with my own damn time. You spend 20 years as a provider, protector, and peacekeeper, and when that role vanishes overnight, it leaves a hole you could drive a semi through. I'd wake up early, like I always did. Coffee, the same chair, the same porch, but no one to drive to school. No one texting me to grab milk on the way home. No drama waiting in the house. Just me. At first, I hated that silence. I fought it. Kept busy. Forced projects. Repainting the porch. Fixing the leaky shed roof. Organizing tools I hadn't touched in years. But eventually, you run out of distractions. And then you're left sitting across from the one person you've avoided for decades. Yourself. That's when real healing starts. When you finally stop avoiding the man in the mirror. I started journaling. Didn't plan to, just happened. At night, I'd pour a drink, sit at the kitchen table, and write. Not for anyone else. Not for pity. For me. Every ugly thought. Every moment I bit my tongue during those 20 years. Every time I knew something was wrong and ignored it. I wrote it all. I bled it onto paper because I needed to empty the poison out. And slowly, painfully, it worked. I started therapy. I used to think therapy was for weak people. Turns out, weakness is refusing to face your own damage. Strength is having the guts to walk into that office and say, I let someone destroy me for 20 years. I don't want to be that man again. And week after week, I started unpacking things I hadn't dared touch before. Why I stayed as long as I did. Why I ignored my instincts. Why I thought loyalty meant self-sacrifice. Why I confused being a good man with being a silent man. I faced it all. The betrayal wasn't the beginning of my failure. It was the end of it. The truth is, I failed myself long before she failed me. I lost pieces of myself in that marriage. But now, for the first time, I was collecting them again. And slowly, life got lighter. Not happier. Not perfect. But lighter. I started hiking again. Fishing on weekends. Joined a small group of men. Other guys who'd walked through their own betrayals. Real men. No masks. No fake toughness. Just scars and honesty. We swapped stories. Not for sympathy, but for clarity. Because you heal faster when you realize you're not the only one who got blindsided by someone you trusted. We all bled. We all rebuilt. And there's a quiet kind of brotherhood in that. My daughter kept reaching out too. Cautious steps. Little visits. Small talks that didn't try to solve everything overnight. And I let her. Not because I forgot. Not because I fully trusted yet. but because she was doing the one thing her mother never did, the work. She wasn't entitled to my forgiveness, but she was earning my time. And for now, that was enough. People say time heals all wounds. They're full of it. Time doesn't heal. Work heals. And I was finally doing the work.